job on part of public works, keeping it running and maintained properly.
Thanks. Councillor Danaka?
I just, in looking at the letter that was sent to Kelly June the 9th, West Pro Infrastructure, completion time days, 400 days.
What we usually do is we don't, we let the contractors set their own schedule. This way we feel that we get a better price for them if they can control their own schedule. Once they set their schedule, we keep them to it. 400 calendar days, I'm not exactly sure why they put so many days in there. Obviously, it's not going to take them 400 days to get it completed. We always, when we initiate the project, we always get the contractor to give us a detailed construction schedule, so we know exactly when they're going to be on site as well. I really don't know why they put 400 days.
Okay. I had a second question. At any time during this upgrade to this new lift station, will that area, that lift station services be without service?
There's going to be a point in time where a switch over needs to happen. So yeah, there will be a, I don't know exactly how many hours or days, or probably hours. That lift station is going to be, the existing lift station is going to be out of service, but yeah, at some point it will have to happen.
But there's an allowance in the contract for bypass pumps. So when that happens, the pump, instead of the lift station working, the pumps will pump it over to the enforcement bypass.
Mr.
The
Walker?
way we've talked about this being done, Councillor Danaka, is the new lift station will be constructed, and then all it will be is a few, hopefully a few hours that it'll be just transitioning the flow from the old lift station to the new one. And then there will be commissioning and those types of things to be gone through, but we're not anticipating very long.
Yeah, and we would actually go to the point where we would commission the new lift station with even potable water coming out of the fire hydrant to make sure that the system works the way it's supposed to work before we start diverting any sewage flows into the new lift station. And the existing lift station wouldn't be decommissioned for a little while until the new one has had a chance to run whatever Vern decides for 2 months or 3 months, whatever the confidence level is going to be before the existing one will be completely decommissioned.
Any other questions, Councillor?
I'm done, thank you.
Councillor Long?
Again, it's pretty simple to follow. It's just discouraging to see it so high, and something that we should have looked at maybe 10 years ago instead of now. But I mean, why is it such a huge discrepancy from when it was first brought to our attention?
It was brought to the attention when we figured we could just retrofit the wet well and not do anything with the dry side. But it's been brought over through the engineering that was presented to council prior to you, this council being organized, that the concrete below the water line and the floor of that wet well is gone. It's done. They did some coring on the concrete and it's rotten.
Yeah.
The existing lift station, that wet well, that's 60 years old, and it's the standards were a little different 60 years ago.
Really?
Just a little bit, and we're dealing with raw sewage, so that lift station doesn't owe anything.
No.
Mr. Walker?
I also was very concerned about the cost, so I went and I called our previous engineering company to see what projects like this were coming in at, and it is what it is. We're competing with some of these mechanical contractors working in Fort McMurray and other parts of the oil field now, as opposed to a few years ago. They're doing one in Wabasca that's wide open spaces. They only have, I think, Mr. Rock quoted me as 50 horsepower pumps, and it's right on 2.1 million. So it's in the ballpark.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other
Also,
questions?
sorry, also, before we ever started this, if you normally look at some of the engineering costs that are being charged out on a project like this, it's based on 12 to 15%. I talked with Mr. Duffy and got a negotiated flat rate price before we went on to this. So if you look at it, it's about maybe 9% is what engineering is costing us.
Thank you.
That's everything.
All right. Councillor Panasic?
I'm just wondering, and I'm not sure, I don't know how this works, but I know with a lot of new facilities that you build, you need support for the operators and making sure that it's working. Are we getting any of that kind of support from this company when we work with that? If we award them the tender?
There's always a operational manual, and there's always a training aspect after when it's being commissioned. That's what we go through as operators. A lift station runs pretty standard, other than the new electrical systems that will be put in there. We have redundancy in this lift station because I'm not comfortable with some of the new technology yet. That is going to be put in on a trial basis here. We still kept the old light bulbs, which are the old tip mercury switches, and make them on. And so,
Yeah, with any project that we do, we always allow for training on the new system, even though there's many lift stations in town. The operators know how to run it and maintain it, but it's a brand new system. So there's going to be a formal training done on the pumps and on the actual operation of that facility. And obviously there's also going to be a 1-year warranty that the contractor will be responsible to fix or to that everything runs properly.
Now we have a member of our team who comes out and commissioning. So if there's any issues that come up, it's just a phone call away to help.
And hopefully we meet.
Yeah. Well, I just know when we were out on the conference, they took us to some new buildings, and people would say, yeah, I know how to use the HVAC systems, but the new technologies, they weren't being used right. They ended up getting damaged. They had to, then they had to do repairs and maintenance way sooner than they should have. So that's what I guess I'm just making sure we've got something in there so that we're well trained, and maybe not just right at the fact, but coming back a couple of months later and making sure that it's being run the way it should be.
other than the fact that this is just newer technology, we have 4 other lift stations that function the same way as this one does.
Yeah, it's just those, and I don't know how much technology there is going to be implemented in there. Maybe there isn't any, but. And is decommission of the existing one part of the contract too? Will they? They're good.
No, it's not.
We took that out, and Public Works is going to do that ourselves.
Okay.
When the estimate for this lift station came in at 1.7 million, I made a trip into Edmonton. We took out about $300,000 worth of stuff that was originally in this lift station, in Merrick's estimate, to try to reduce the cost. Ultimately, I don't know what this would have cost had we left those in.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Councillor Empter.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what we've already discussed and already what you've discussed here, because I'm confounded. I'm confused by the process. Last year, the bid came in at about 1.718. We felt it was too high. We thought we'd get better bids if we waited.
We never tendered this. This is the first tender.
We had an investigation done. Sorry, you're right. Correct. Yeah. We had an investigation done, and we figured about $1.8 million, and that's why I came back. Thank you for correcting me. So then we knocked 300,000 off to try and drop it about to 1.4, and then it came back at 150% at about 2.1. I just, I'm not understanding. It is 10 months later from what the investigation was done when last year?
It would have been done early, about this time last year, we went into the detailed stuff.
That's when we first initiated the project.
So our
Meeting started.
Our ballpark investigation said about 1.8 million. We knocked 300,000 off, 1.5. Now it comes in at 2.1. We're now at 150%. So our ballparking, did things change that much in 12 months, or was our ballparking tool out a little bit? Like, well, what happened?
I think from our end, we looked at the site and we always compared. I mean, we look at our design and we always compare it to what's happening in the industry for these types of projects, and looking at previous experiences as well. And I guess one thing that maybe threw us off is that the actual site, it's a very limited space. There is really no room no real room to work on that site. It's a residential lot. So I think that's why we're seeing those higher costs coming out, because there's a lot of risk for the contractors working in such a small confined, not really confined, but small space. And also the second aspect would be, even though we did tender it early in the year before the construction season started, there's I think every municipality is in the same boat where we're competing with the oil field. So if the contractors are busy, the price is coming in a little bit higher. When there isn't a lot of work, the margins get a little bit tighter. We're booming in Alberta, and very few municipalities can compete with the oil field. So I think that's why we're seeing the prices we're seeing. But going back to my initial statement, all three out of the bids were within that 15% mark between each other. So I think this is the real dollar value for that project.
Okay, and forgive my questions. They're not. If they're not, hopefully they're not attacking. They're inquiring.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm trying to do, is to understand. And forgive me for not having experience in this area, Vernon. Is there any when we approached the government of Alberta to try and get some funding, we were told we won't get any because this isn't the last stop for our sewer lift. Is there any way of redesigning and just putting a plain Jane pump here and doing something else elsewhere that will start pulling it? Or is it just a push technology?
We looked at that option, Quentin, and what it would have meant is probably about $1 million worth of changing of the force main system to get it to the last lift station, which would get funding, and then you get 75% funding. Probably if it's in an open location, it might have been maybe a little less, 1.8 million, where you would have got 75% funding.
Not necessarily, because that would have been a bigger lift station, because this lift station currently takes roughly 65% of the flow. If we were to build a new centralized lift station that will be at the end of the line, that would have to take 100% of the flow. So it would have been a bigger structure. Yeah.
So it would have been a bigger contract for the end station and $1 million to upgrade to get it to there.
Yeah.
And then the government, though, would have kicked in 75%?
Just for the lift station.
Yeah.
If there's money available.
Yeah, and there's always, that's always a problem. Okay, the one bid that was removed because of the math error, I like their bid. Their bid is, $700,000 less. Is the math error, they quoted the low, and when you redid the math, it came in higher?
No, their tender summary page, the total contract value